Hi everybody, it's Jim Weigel with Blue Box Auction Gallery. I am here with Armando L. Alvarez. He is part of our research team, and he spent a little bit of time researching some really interesting artifacts for an upcoming auction. But this one we're here to talk about today is specifically in regard to North Korea. And what we have are two really special pieces. There's a book by Kim Il-sung, and there is a watercolor piece of art that was tucked into the book. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that today, but welcome. Thank you for being here to talk through the information that you learned about this piece here. Let's start with the book. Tell us about this the book by Kim Il-sung.
Oh, it's called For an Independent World, and it was sort of him expressing his ideology during the Cold War. He really branches from the traditional sense of kind of you're building that like the Sino-Soviet side, we were kind of creating this block. But then after the Korean War, the land was decimated, and they were taking in so much money and so indebted to these other countries. So he sort of created this idea of juche, or self-reliance form of communism. So they wanted to break away and be a sovereign state, which is one of the key issues of the Korean War, of them working together. So it's really interesting to see how he sort of expresses his ideology, leading to one of these major wars, and then the fallout of that, of them trying to deal within their sort of eastern side, relying on themselves but not really having the capacity to do so, because economically being kind of decimated after the war and very indebted to China and the Soviet Union. So it's just really interesting to see how he kind of expresses himself and really desires to be a self-reliant sovereign state, which is a big key part at that time too, and it's very controversial. So no matter what may have happened, it's still respectful in the fact that you want to live for your people and then take on the action of being what it means to be a true sovereign.
Yeah, and there's something very special about this book, not just the context and what the historical significance is, but what's so really special about this book is...
It has a signature from Kim Il-sung himself.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Just incredible.
Yeah, it's incredible to see that sort of contrast of how there's so many of that one book, but how many can you really count that are signed by the person who wrote it? And having that just historical artifact, it's really cool to see.
Yeah, and research that we've done, where there are not very many, if any, that were available to show that this book was available and signed by the North Korean leader. Quite fascinating. And speaking of really incredible pieces, there was something tucked inside that was a prize winner. So tell everybody about the prize winner and what that prize is and a little bit about that.
Well, there's a watercolor painting or watercolor sketch done by Jong Kwan Chol, who had won the Kim Il-sung Prize, which is an award given to people in different subfields for excellence for your country. And he was one of the award winners, which is impressive to see how he had that connection, being able to sketch Kim Il-sung himself too.
Yeah.
So he must have been a very prominent artistic figure for the North Korean people.
Yeah, and another winner of that prize was Jong Il, who was the actual leader after Kim Il-sung.
That is correct.
Absolutely fascinating. So this is a very special artist. And he, if I remember from what we talked about, was the only person really allowed to draw the leader. Is that fair to say, or was there any more information about that?
I think it's a little difficult to ascertain because getting information from that area during that era is a little bit difficult, but from what we have been able to research and understand is that he was beloved by Kim Il-sung. We had that discussion about how he's reminiscing in his book, talking about how he saw one of Jong Kwan Chol's paintings for the first time and couldn't get it out of his head, and he put it into their national museum, and he thought about it for the rest of his life, just thinking about that piece. So that has to attest to his ability and character in relation to the state, and being able to win that prize and being able to paint Kim Il-sung, that must attest to something about how he is an actual prominent figure for the North Korean people.
Yeah, and the way this watercolor was created was showing him in a very positive light. Tell us what your thoughts are on that, what research showed.
It's a monochromatic palette and has very delicate brush strokes. It's very interesting to see how he sort of painted him in a light that he's optimistic, looking up, looking forward. And in 1952, the Korean War hadn't just ended yet, and you have all of these things going on around you. So it's interesting to see how that optimism expresses itself to the Korean people and their idea that, okay, maybe we can get through this, and being able to use that sort of symbol as a way to, cope and look towards the future when everything looks so bleak and war-torn.
Yeah. And this piece came from an Eastern European seller, and their family had acquired this because they had a background in history and politics. So like you said, the decimation of the country during that Korean conflict, and having this exist and be available is very special and very rare. And absolutely a part of North Korean, if not world economic and political history. Any other thoughts that you think are important to talk about?
I just think it's two really remarkable pieces to see. I mean, it's not very often that you see a book signed by Kim Il-sung and then having a portrait of him from a renowned North Korean artist, which I had not heard of before, and I'm sure other people haven't either. But being able to delve into a part of history that's kind of been blocked off from the rest of the world and start to understand that part of it and be able to put the pieces together from all the other aspects of the Cold War and what's going on. Because I feel like North Korea sometimes gets pushed aside after the Korean War.
Right.
But it's really interesting to see, to kind of dive into something that's not really talked about or even thought of.
Yeah, and painting them in such a positive light at such a tumultuous time is really inspiring, probably for the local people. I certainly don't know myself, but I would say that was done intentionally to paint that upward mobility and upward future that they're planning and working towards.
Yes, exactly. I'm sure, especially when it's at the end of a major war that's been across your lands for quite some time. So it's definitely something that they were using to give people hope or inspire hope, and as they're trying to move forward from this war into the next phase.
Yeah, very neat. Okay, well, thanks again for doing all that research. I think it's very interesting and really fascinating to have this piece of world history and world political history in our fingertips and available for auction.
No, it's amazing. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I've never thought I would see something like this in my life, so this is incredible.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
Yeah, so there you have it, guys. Coming up in our next auction, take a look, and thanks for watching.